You all. Today is Thursday, 10th of November, so we are at COP and moving ahead with session 1 of the day. I would like to welcome participants. We have speakers that are joining us here on site and participants also that are connecting remotely. Today we will have an agenda that is quite packed. We will have the opening remarks and the welcoming remarks in the beginning. One from Massamba Thioye, he's the executive project manager of the Global Innovation Hub, and then that will be followed by Valérie, who will be also participating at the first part of the session. And Valérie is a member of the European Parliament, so welcome to this session. Then we will follow with the moderated discussions. We have Kaoru that will be joining, and panelists that are on-site and remotely. We have Ilias Iakovidis, and he's advisor to DG Connect from the European Commission. So welcome, Ilias. And we have Pelläck, Scharp. He's the head of sustainability at Ericsson. We also have Pauline of the Beeck. Pauline is the Associate Director of Europe, the Carbon Trust, and that will be them, followed by our last panelist of today, Stephen Moore, the head of the Climate Action GSM. So very happy to have you all here on board for this session. I would like now to invite the project executive of the Global Innovation Hub, Massamba Thioye, to open the session, some opening remarks. Thank you. Over to you, Massamba.
Thank you, Carlos. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to those that are following us virtually. My name is Massamba Thioye. I'm UN Climate Change Global Innovation Hub. So digital is extremely important for the green transition. And what we believe is that the green transition will be a twin green digital transition, or it won't be. And this is because digital is absolutely needed if we want to mobilize the type of climate action that are the most transformative. Without digital technology, it will be very difficult to expand the innovation space to cover such type of climate action. And this is why the Global Innovation Hub put a lot of emphasis on digital technology. We are very pleased to welcome you today here, and we are looking forward to have very lively dialogue. Now I will hand over to our facilitator, Kaoru. You have the floor.
Thank you very much, Massamba. And hi, everyone. Good morning and welcome to the Global Innovation Hub. It's really a pleasure to be your moderator for this session. But before we do that, I'd like to open the floor to MEP Valérie. There's a bit of an echo there. It's just really quickly about Valérie, and she's the co-president of the French delegation in Renew Europe and the Renew Europe coordinator in the Budget Committee. She negotiated the 2021 to 2027 MFF. She also sits in the Industry Committee, focusing on digital policies. Finally, MEP Ayer initiated the EGDC pilot project, for which we're really grateful. So without further ado, you have the floor, MEP Ayer.
Thank you very much. Hello, everybody. Thank you. Can you hear me well? Yes. Thank you for the invitation, and congrats for organizing this event. I'm very, very pleased to see such panel being organized today in the margin of the COP27, at a time when the fight against climate change and the need for solutions have never been as urgent as today. When I started my term as a new member of the European Parliament in 2019, the digital and climate transitions were the two main political priorities we wanted to defend for the European Parliament. Our objective at the European Parliament, and in particular with my political family Renew Europe, has been twofold. First, set an ambitious climate target of climate neutrality for Europeans, and second, reform all the sectors of the economy to make sure we reach such targets. Much of our attention has been devoted to reducing the carbon footprint of each sector, and rightly so, but this has often led us to focusing more on the empty half of the glass and less on the enablers or on the climate transition. The first initiatives aimed at looking at climate and digital often focus on greening the ICT sectors with more efficient data centers, fostering circular economy and more optimized manufacturing processes. In my home country, France, we have adopted a law on the environmental impact of the digital sector that will make sure consumers are better informed about the carbon footprint of the digital devices and services. Yet, in the same way energy is used in every sector of the economy, digital technologies are used across industries and bring about a substantial potential to effectively reduce emissions throughout each sector. We have, I think, however, lacked the ability to measure effectively this potential and the industrial mobilization to develop effectively green digital technologies. So the European Green Digital Coalition, which I initiated together with the European Commission, aims precisely at assessing this positive net impact, for example, of digital, from example of digital devices used to optimize energy efficiency in buildings to enhance transport management. We are now in capacity to effectively measure such positive impact. And now that we need more resilient and green energy grids, ports, or agricultural machines, the work of the coalition will make it possible to identify in each sector digital technologies and solutions that will help us collectively be on track and meet our climate requirements. At the European level, the European Commission has already called for the coalition, and it works to use and expand. It works on the energy sector. This is a path in the right direction, for which I'm very pleased, thanks to the involvement of all the 36 ICT companies involved and the Secretariat of the Coalition, of course. So I'm really happy that your concrete solutions will be presented today to illustrate that has been done so far. Unfortunately, I cannot stay longer, but I really hope that you will have, and I know that you will have a fruitful discussion. So thank you very much.
Testing. Oh, great. Thank you very much, Ms. Ayo, for your remarks. Indeed, and also thank you for your support. It's been a very interesting work so far, and we wouldn't be anywhere without your support, so thank you very much indeed. In that case, I'd like to move on to the panel portion of the meeting, of today's event, but starting off with some introductions, of course. I'd like to introduce Mr. Ilias Iakovidis, advisor at DG Connect at the European Commission. Ilias is advisor in looking at the digital aspect of green transition, and he's working on maximizing the benefits of green digital transformation in cooperation with several Commission services and external stakeholders. Ilias has initiated the European Green Digital Coalition that works together with a Parliament project on science-based methods to estimate the net environmental impact of digital solutions and on guidelines for green digital transformation in different sectors. Our next speaker is Mats Pelläck Scharp, Head of Sustainability at Ericsson. Mats has the responsibility of managing the climate action, circular economy, energy performance, as well as product portfolio aspects of digital inclusion and triple bottom line impact of products, services, and company operations. During Mats's leadership, the company has set targets that are accepted to be on 1.5 C by the Science Based Targets Initiative, so congratulations on that, Matt. Third is Pauline, Beeck, Associate Director of Europe at the Carbon Trust. Pauline is an Associate Director and responsible for client relationships at Europe. Pauline has over 6 years of experience supporting clients and accelerating their route to net zero. Thirdly is Massamba Thioye, whom you just heard from. He is the project executive of the UN Climate Change Global Innovation Hub. Massamba is leading the development of regulations pertaining to the measurement of climate action impact, incentive mechanism for climate and sustainability action, and a framework to enhance the use of innovation to support climate and sustainability actions. He recently initiated the UN Climate Change Global Innovation Hub, for whom we are partnering with today, and is leading its development as executive. Finally, not least, Stephen Moore, Head of Climate Action at GSMA. Stephen, perhaps you can provide a bit of an introduction to yourself.
Yeah, thanks, Kaoru. So I'm responsible for the Climate Action Programme at the GSMA, which is the Industry Association for Mobile Network Operators globally. So we work very closely with a climate action task force of 60 mobile network operators around the world, and we originally helped them set targets. We originally helped them with disclosure, then we supported them to set targets, and now we're actually working with them on how they can achieve their targets.
Thank you very much, Stephen. So that is our esteemed panel. I'd like to start off with Ilias. We've received a bit of an introduction to the work from the Parliament side from Ms. Ayer, but from your side, perhaps you can provide that context and introduction to the European Green Digital Coalition project. So Ilias, you have the floor.
Morning there to everybody. First of all, I would like to thank Valérie for making this project happen. Okay, so in March of 2021, Commissioner Breton inaugurated the European Green Digital Coalition, which everybody can see actually online if you Google greendigitalcoalition.eu. The coalition itself started with 26 companies. Major ICT companies. Now we are 35, and there are several others that are about to join. These companies have committed three things. First, that they will develop and scale and deploy the greenest possible ICT solutions. And when we say greenest, it's not only energy efficiency, it's also material efficiency. So production, design, circularity, durability, and so on. Second, they committed that they will jointly, together among themselves, together with the scientific and expert board supported by the project, will develop assessment methods how to judge when a digital solution, when a technology applied in a given context is actually beneficial for the environment. Because it is not obvious when digitalization has what we call triple sustainability win, that it's economically, socially and environmentally beneficial. And that is very difficult. The job that coalition does is kind of unique because it's very complex to try to analyze the economic and environmental benefits at the same time. And we have not even started to look at the social benefits, which will have to be also complemented with this work. So, and the third thing is that they will work with the sectoral stakeholders. That means energy stakeholders, automotive and transport stakeholders, with construction and agriculture stakeholders, with smart city stakeholders and manufacturing stakeholders, to make them understand how to use digitalization so they get triple win. At least do not do harm to the environment. So they have economic wins, which everybody understands, and that's how ICT works today. But at the same time, at least not to do harm to the environment, ideally to actually benefit the environment, both from the emissions point of view, as well as pollution, water, biodiversity, and you name it. Now, this work is very complex. It has started, and we are doing it bottom up. What is unique about the coalition? That we take real life data from the pilots, and you will hear from Mats and later on also from the other speakers how this work is actually happening. Bottom up data, real life data from real pilots to see what is really the impact of digital. So far, most of the studies, and there are many studies, are doing it top down. So there are kind of estimates and macroeconomic estimates of the impact of digitalization that show potential, but do we realize this potential? We don't know. We have to measure. And that measurement is the hardest thing, and that's, if I had to conclude, is just to ask everybody to really assess and measure what they're doing with their digital projects. We have discovered that people do not measure enough. They don't really know. They trust that digitalization will get them somewhere, but without knowing where they're going. So if I conclude with a question, the question is, what is green digital transformation that Massamba mentioned? What is this about? What is the interplay of green transition, which we know where it's going, and the digital transition that we experience everywhere around us without really knowing where it's going, but we experience that one. We know that we need green transition, but what is their interplay? Well, what most of the media talks about is that they harm each other, that digitalization is harmful to green transition. This is what captures most of the media today. They talk about data centers, they talk about e-waste, how we're throwing away our mobile devices. This is what is measurable and capturing the media. But that's the wrong focus. It's the synergy that can save us. Because if you think about it kind of purely from numbers point of view, the emissions of ICT sector, let's say they are around 3% in the developed world and continents like Europe. Suppose we make it ICT to be greener, we save 1, maybe 2% of total emissions. That will not save us. That will not do what we need to do by 2030 and 2050. What we really need to do is to put ICT in the service of energy sector, agriculture sector, construction sector, mobility sector, manufacturing sector. We have the obligation, we have the responsibilities, ICT sector, to help the others and to be as a service to them. And that is also a mental kind of a service mentality that we need to have as ICT companies. And that is what the coalition is all about, to bring service and measurable benefits to these sectors. So I will not say more. We have a lot of work ahead of us. I would like to give the word to Mats that has the first example of how it works and what are the measurable benefits. We have more, and people can look at the website for more.
Thank you very much, Ilias, and indeed, thanks for shedding some light on what needs to be done and what we hope to achieve with this ambitious project. And Matt, so over to you. Ericsson has been very much involved with the technical work and the case studies, so you have the floor.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be here. So Ericsson is a sustainability pioneer in the private sector, and we are extremely nerdy on data and facts. So we have been working with this for a long time, and in fact, the case that we have submitted and that is sort of approved in the EU Green Digital Coalition is on a harbor, a port, the port of Livorno, and it was an EU-funded project, the academic part of the project. So it was an EU-funded project on testing how 5G and digital technology can improve operations of a port. And it's very interesting what Ilias said, because this was much wider study than only climate. So we did in fact do both economic study and social study and environmental study in this project. So we looked at all impacts on the Sustainable Development Goals. So we, for instance, looked on worker safety. I don't know if you know that, but in the shipping industry, most people get hurt or die in the ports, not on the ships. So it's a very dangerous workplace. And through digitizing and moving people and material flow separated, what we could see is that we increase safety significantly. So instead of having the crane operators climbing up and down into cranes every time they need to go to the toilet or get a coffee or start working and so on, they can sit in a room and operate the cranes remotely, get much better work environment and also easier to recruit people to do that job. So that was part of the social study. Also what we saw was that in the port we got a 25% improvement on efficiency. So the economic side is definitely there. But what we are talking about here at COP is really the climate impact. And what we could see was a direct impact of 8% reduction of carbon emissions from the total port based on electrifying the operations and using 5G to drive that. So I think those are some of the examples of what we were doing, what we were studying, and also how important digitalization is. And just to put that into perspective, we did research earlier on what digitalization can do, and we came up with a number of 15% in other sectors. But that was under the condition that we scale the digital solutions, and we are not doing that. And we need to scale them in the right way. So the existing solutions take us to 15%, but then what we see with the 5G, like the port of Livorno, that's an additional 5% opportunity or so, and that is also GSMA research that has demonstrated similar numbers. So it's a huge opportunity that we have. Thank you.
Mats, interesting case study indeed, looking at the social, environmental, and the economic. Pauline, I'd like to hand it off to you. So Carbon Trust has been looking at reviewing these case studies and looking at the technical side of things. What have you seen so far, and where are the potentials?
Yes, so we've looked at 2 further case studies in addition to the one that Mats just spoke about, and they're both in the building sector. So one of them was for Schneider Electric, so this is a very advanced BMS system, so building management system, which essentially has a very sophisticated way of assessing the temperature, the kind of air quality, comfort of the occupants, but importantly also then looking at the use of space and when in time that space is used. So with this system, it very efficiently can calibrate the heating, lighting, and cooling needs of a building. So we've kind of assessed that case study, and we've found that with their system, a building can save up to 13 to 30% of energy emissions, or energy use, sorry. And this equates to roughly kind of 9.5 kilograms of CO2 per square meter of an average European office. So yeah, really, really quite impactful. And then another one that we've looked at is from Cisco. So this is the power over ether solution, where essentially it has a more energy efficient electricity transmission. So this is the connection to the Internet of Things or other electronic devices in a building, and essentially there's no need to kind of convert between AC and DC, so reducing the conversion losses. And there's also a dematerialization aspect. So I think when we think of digital, we often think of software, but many of these solutions also have a dematerialization impact, reducing the need for materials in kind of whatever solution that it's working with. So in this case in particular, there's a reduced need for the volume of copper and steel, obviously very emissions intensive raw materials to harvest, to process. So this solution also then requires less materials to be used. So we've looked at this case study in the transport and building sector, but as part of the kind of next work streams, we'll also be looking at case studies in the agriculture, smart cities, power and manufacturing sectors as well.
Hello. Yeah, thank you, Pauline. So again, we've been doing this work now for about a year, so we'll be wrapping up year 1. Question for both of you, Mats and Pauline. You can decide who goes first, but having done the exercise for the project now for about a year, what are the data requirements and the common challenges for ICT companies in providing this type of data? Mats, Pauline, go ahead.
Yeah, maybe I can start with the general and you can give your personal experience. So as with all carbon reporting, data accuracy and the data requirements are really important. For these particular types of calculations, we're looking at calculating the net carbon impact of a solution. So there's broadly three areas of data that we need. The first is a life cycle assessment of the solution itself. So this companies tend to be relatively familiar with footprinting. However, it does include manufacturing emissions, for example, which if this is in your kind of upstream part of the value chain, that data can be challenging to get. So that's one data component that is can be an issue, but there are methodologies to kind of calculate that. Then when it comes to the actual kind of use of the product, that's obviously a key thing that needs to be calculated and the data captured as well. The issue that we see there is that the solution might not have been kind of built or implemented with kind of measuring the energy use or the emission savings in mind. And often it's not the provider, so Ericsson, for example, it might be the solution holder who actually has that data. So it requires quite a lot of collaboration with the provider and the solution holder to then be able to capture the data of the solution in use. And what's, I guess, unique about these types of calculations, which companies might be less familiar with, is that we also need to calculate the counterfactual. So what would have been the emissions if this solution was not deployed? And that can be based on historical emissions, so how this process was done in the past. And as we all know, getting data from historical emissions is difficult because it's already difficult enough to get data from the last 12 months. But in some cases also the counterfactual is hypothetical. So really making sure that you create the correct assumptions for what the counterfactual would have been and kind of estimating the data for that as well can be quite challenging. But Mats, what was your experience in doing this?
I definitely agree to what you said, possibly with the exception that the life cycle part is something that we have done for many years. So when I started in Ericsson for the first time back in '97, I got the life cycle assessment in my hand. So I think the first we did on a mobile network is in '94. So for us, that is sort of very deep in our DNA to work from a life cycle perspective in everything that we do. So that is sort of where we start from. But I agree, the hardest part is really to get the baseline. We often get the question from people in the company saying, couldn't you calculate the benefit of this? And I say, yeah, what did you do before? We don't know. Okay, so how should we do a calculation of the improvements if we don't know what the history was? So that's definitely super important to start by getting the data, the baselining. And then the other part is really sharing the data. But I think the most difficult part is to assess sort of rebound and the effects that would have happened if we didn't do it, because that is more or less a guesswork all the time. So, just a comment on rebound. I think there is an over-exaggeration of rebound effect. For instance, take an example of digitalization. All of us use our digital phone or our phone as our camera nowadays. Before we had a digital camera, and before that we had sort of an analog thing with film and chemistry. So it's really putting that into the phone makes a huge dematerialization. And if we don't print the pictures, there is no rebound effect. We can take enormous amounts of pictures and store them digitally. And that is sort of thing, if we can sort of transform other parts into dematerialization. For instance, we know that printed paper globally has gone down with 20%. After we have digitized the printing industry and the media industry. So that there is no rebound effect on those things. So I think you need to also know if we truly fully digitize, there is, I mean, you can listen to all music you want. There is no limitation to the music that you can listen to because there is no rebound effect. The more you listen, there is no more energy used by your phone, to be honest.
Thank you both. So, Mats, while I have you, when do you think then a digital solution can claim those emission savings? When do you think a digital solution can actually claim those emission savings?
Digital solutions can never claim the savings because it is not our savings, it is the port savings, right? We enable that. We help them get those savings. We help the buildings save energy. And I think now talking to European Parliament and others, when we talk about, in COP, when we talk about buildings, we see that, okay, we will talk about retrofitting, changing the heating system, double glazing, all of that. Takes ages. Putting in a digital system, save 15% in a couple of months or half a year. And that's an opportunity that we cannot miss. It's so much faster to go for the digital solutions than aiming for the long-term solutions. And we need them to buy time because we can do it now.
That's, Pauline, going back to you, how did you identify whether the solutions did indeed have that positive impact?
Hello. Yeah. The first. Hello. Yeah, I think it's working now. Sorry about that. So when we look at the LCA, for example, of the solution, essentially all of the emissions associated with any manufacturing of the solution itself and its own use phase has to be cancelled out by the positive impact it's then delivering to another sector or company. So I think where this really differs from a measurement perspective is that it lies outside of a company's value chain. So it's in someone else's value chain that you then see the savings. So that's why the calculation is complicated, and it's very important to follow a specific methodology, which is exactly what the EGDC is looking to standardize and develop. There are other components to that as well. So as Matt's mentioned, it's not just the carbon we're looking at. The solution should also not do any harm in any other kind of environmental or social consideration. So that's something that we're not yet quantifying for the case studies, but we are looking at from a qualitative perspective. And I think really importantly as well, something that's often overlooked is, does this solution belong in a 2030 or 2050 world? So we might be looking at something that makes a coal plant very efficient today, but we know that that's not part of the net zero future of 2030 and 2050. So something that is enabling emissions reductions in an industry that we don't really see to have a place in the future, that could not be claimed as having a net carbon impact. It's a very localized and short term, and that would not be something that we kind of consider as part of these calculations.
Thank you, Pauline. Massamba, I'd like to go to you next. So I'm really interested to hear what your thoughts on what's been said so far. And is greenhouse gas emissions enough? Just looking at, trying to look away from the GHGs. What about the social component? Targeting those.
Thank you. I would like first to start by commending the European Commission for this very, very important initiative. As I have mentioned in my opening remark, the green transition can only take place if it is a twin green digital transition. And we all know that standard methodology and method are policy instruments that help achieve or promote specific type of action. So the fact that the European Commission has facilitated the European Green Digital Coalition is really something extremely important and something that needs to be commended, because digital is critical for the achievement of the climate goal. Now, what I found also really important in the vision that is guiding this work under the European Green Digital Coalition is the moonshot mindset that is guiding the general vision. So these standard methods and methodologies are not developed based on the perception of what is possible, but what is really guiding here the development of these methods and methodology is what is needed. It was mentioned by Ilias at the beginning. What we are trying to do under the European Green Digital Coalition is extremely complex. But this is what is needed, because this is what will make the methodology relevant. We did not start by saying, oh, this thing is too complex, let's not do that, let's do something more simple, but that will not reflect the reality. The approach taken is to say, let's be as close as possible to the reality, and then let's address what we can address now, and what we cannot address will stay open and will be addressed in the future. I was very much admirative with this type of mindset applied to the development of standard, because this is not what we see very often. Very often people are developing standards that are very nice, accurate but irrelevant because it is not reflecting the reality. Now, one aspect that is really important also is the fact that it is not just focusing on GHG emission reduction, but it is trying to have a broader perspective that take into account not only the environmental aspect, but also the social aspect and the economical aspect. And again, this is something important. Science is searching for truth. And this is why we can say science is value neutral. But innovation, which is the application of scientific knowledge to develop solution, is not neutral. It has always an agenda. And so far, to a large extent, innovation has been used mainly to build power, economic power and military power. The fact that we are trying to develop a standard that will provide incentive to the ICT sector so that they develop solutions that are serving people and the planet is also very much commendable. And to be able to do that, we should not focus only at the sectoral level. We should incentivize the development of solutions that will contribute in satisfying the core human needs of people. But satisfying the core human need of people in a way that is aligned with the climate goal, in a way that is aligned with the SDGs, in a way that we can provide well-being to 10 billion people by 2050 without nobody left behind, in a way that enhances biodiversity, in a way that contributes to land regeneration, and in a way that fit within the planetary boundary.
Thank you, Massamba. Stephen, I'd like to go to you next. You've been very quiet in the corner. So in terms of your role at GSMA, what's the role of the mobile industry in the green digital transition, both from the enabling side and also from managing its own footprint, please?
Yeah, thanks, Kaoru. Absolutely, as you say, it's from both sides. So we've heard fantastic examples of how green digital technologies are helping us to reduce emissions across all sectors, and there's lots of examples from mobile network operators as well. Some of them have been submitted as part of the European Green Digital Coalition. On the other side of it, it's also a commitment to reducing the emissions of the sector. So back in 2019, the board of the GSMA, which represents the largest mobile operators globally, made a commitment to be net zero by 2050 on behalf of the whole mobile industry. And this was unprecedented at the time. Actually, no major economy had made a net zero commitment at that time in 2019. So what's happening since is a process by which mobile network operators have been aligning their targets to be net zero by 2050. Now have around 20% of the industry has a net zero target. But more important than that, I think, is the proportion that have set science-based targets by 2030. And this is just half the industry. Then we've got European operators who have gone even further, because as part of the European Green Digital Coalition, the declaration that is signed for that is that they will commit to be net zero 10 years earlier than our industry ambition, and that's by 2040. So what myself, I've been working with operators on is, well, it's great now you've set these targets, but how do we actually achieve? And this is the theme of the COP this year, is the ambition that was set last year at COP. How are we making sure that ambition is turned into action? And the GSMA, we did a survey with our members in the last couple of months to understand, are you switching to renewable electricity and how much are you using at the moment? And this is a bit of a preview because we haven't launched this yet. We'll be publishing it tomorrow. But for the European operators, they are now using an average of 71% renewable electricity for their networks in Europe. So this is huge. You know, we've seen a massive upscaling of the amount of renewables that are used over the last 10 years. And I think that's really a testament to the fact that the targets that were set last year and have been set in years before then really are becoming action. The last thing I'd just like to point out as well on the renewable side is that there's different ways you can buy renewable electricity. So perhaps the simplest way, or it's not always simple, is to buy renewable energy certificates. We've seen quite a lot of that across the globe. It's not always possible to do that in every country. What we're also seeing in Europe is that operators are committing to long-term power purchase agreements on renewables, which is arguably seen as a slightly deeper form of renewable commitment. And then we're even having some operators now looking to explore 24/7 renewable energies. This is matching every single unit of energy that they use with energy that's produced by a renewable source in real time, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. So I think we just see the leadership on renewables being pushed the whole time. And I'm hoping that we'll get up to 100% renewables across Europe in the not too distant future.
Thank you, Stephen. And it's really nice indeed to hear that ambition coming from the telecoms operators' perspective. I just wanted to give the floor over to Ilias. Your reflections and thoughts so far and what our panelists have said. Please.
Everybody, thanks to Mats for the experience that he brought personally, but also as a company to this world. Very much thanks to Carbon Trust to actually make this work happen, because it's their valuable experience and the work that is now happening at the standardization bodies that come together. It's very much needed. Thanks Pauline and of course Veronica and Anna, everybody, the whole team of Carbon Trust. I'm really grateful for the nice words and comments from Massamba. It's nice to hear this, but we need to make sure that we together scale this. That's why I would ask anybody who is listening online or in the floor that we actually have a supporting partner notion in the Green Digital Coalition. So those that are not necessarily members can support or can benefit from the work of the coalition by becoming supporting partners. And it's just enough to go and visit the site and look for supporting partner of greendigitalcoalition.eu. And of course, thanks to GSMA and the other partners of the coalition, which is the ETNO, Digital Europe, Digital SME Alliance, and all those coordinated by GeSI, where Kaoru is sitting. So thanks to all the partners to make this reality. So what I would like to say is just the beginning of very hard work. And as Massamba said, we need a reality injection into all the narratives that deal with Green Digital Coalition that stay at very artificial, horizontal and potential level. If we do not bring it down to reality, we will not make the benefits real. We will just make them potential. And I think that the ecosystem of the COP27 is coming slowly together. We had the announcement from Climate Trace. We have our DG Klima colleagues that are measuring potentials at the site level. So we'll be able to actually get what are the emission levels of today, before or after the digital implementations. So we need to look wider and see what are the data there in the open space based on open standards that we can harness, because this is not just the work of the coalition. This is much bigger problem that we all need to cooperate. If there is one keyword that I would like to leave for everybody, is that climate change, if there is one proxy keyword, is cooperation 5.0. Cooperation that has never been before there achieved at this intersectoral, disciplinary level. And the second one is, instead of all of us trying to be cocooned in our own independent ways, to strive for something much higher than independence, that is called interdependence. Because we see that on every fractal level. As a continent, we try to be more independent because we got our fingers burned during the COVID era. At the national state, at the regional, at the company level, everybody's trying to make myself independent, not to rely on anybody. It's the interdependence and cooperation that is the only way out, together with, of course, technological innovation. But technology and innovation is not deus ex machina that will save us while we just do nothing. So thanks, and as I said, coalition is there. I would like to say that the whole day, we cannot cover in this session everything that deals with Green Digital Coalition and the work and green digital transitions. There'll be a whole day of sessions talking about it. There is a session right after, and several sessions during the day. But there is also one powerful area where digital is very important, and that's circularity of our economy. And I would like to basically just say a point that if I had a silver bullet where to apply digital, I would quickly make sure that our economy is circular by using information, data, and digitally enabled product as a service models to get away from this natural resource dependence of what the notion of growth is in our economy. And for that, there is a session tomorrow afternoon in this pavilion at 4 o'clock about how digital can help circular economy. But this is my concluding remarks because I will need to leave, unfortunately, now to another session. So thank you very much for having us, and good continuation to all of you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ilias, for those words of motivation. A great way to end the panel, indeed. We do have about 4 minutes for question and answer. I don't know if we have any questions from the audience today. Yes, please. And if you could introduce yourself and your organization.
Thank you very much. I'm Chris Howes. I'm the Chief Digital and Information Officer at the Department for Environment, Food and Rural Affairs in the UK, and also the lead for green technology for UK government. I was kind of interested in some of the comments about, you gave examples, I think, from an Ericsson perspective about having, being able to get rid of separate digital cameras and relying on phones. There's kind of an issue, though, that we see cloud computing as free, and when we talk about, well, we can stream, we can, but 40 to 60% of data center usage is down to streaming networks, Netflix, etc. So how do we kind of ensure that consumers can take informed decisions there? And also linking to the point about circular economy, we need to get in a position of transparency where, as a purchaser, I've got full view of Scope 3 emissions in a consistent format, but also I've got an understanding of the proportion of recycled materials that are going into my phone and those sorts of things, because 50 million tons of e-waste every year can't be the right thing. At some stage, somebody's going to mine those tips. So any thoughts on both circularity and on kind of cloud computing impacts?
Thank you.
Sure. So just a couple of quick comments. So as I said, Ericsson is a pretty nerdy company when it comes to data. So we have collected data for the whole ICT sector and published that. So the ITU standard for the ICT sector is based on Ericsson research to a large degree, so the official numbers. And we know how much energy, what is the rise of the energy consumption in the whole industries between 2010 and 2021. What is sort of the consumption when it comes to the telecom sector. We have also included data centers and so on. And in fact, even though we have increased, I know the numbers in my head from the European side, the energy consumption has not gone up. And then we built 4G and we added all the other networks. So what has happened is, in fact, that if you look on the whole ICT sector, then what we see is that energy consumption is rising very with very small numbers, because what we see is a transition. In a similar way as you transition from digital cameras into your mobile phone, people have reduced the number of TVs in their homes. We have moved from copper cables into to fiber and mobile networks. What we have done with sort of office computing is that all the inefficient servers of offices and in companies has moved into the cloud, into the data centers. So it's not only the streaming. And we have in fact published a report on your personal digital footprint where you can get all the facts. And I think that we have seen similar reports from Carbon Trust and from other organizations that have looked at how much does the streaming cost from an energy perspective. And if you look on your mobile phone, your smartphone today, if you include the data centers and the mobile network, your charging, your personal charging, and everything, the yearly use is 35 watt hours. So if you keep a light bulb of 2 watts, the normal LED light, lit for 24 hours, that's the same amount as the whole network, everything you do on your mobile phone for 1 year. So I mean, yes, data centers are increasing, but they are also replacing quite a lot of other things. And there is also an amazing development on sort of the technology. So it's not only Moore's law, it's Moore's law plus the software plus the new technologies that we do. So for instance, 5G is not sort of only the digital part improvement, it's also the software and the technology by sort of beamforming and so on. So it's more than 10 times as energy efficient as 4G, and 4G was much more energy efficient. So I think the improvements is absorbing the growth to a very large degree. We see a very small energy increase, but if you sort of would take away the other things. So I think, but I recommend you, we have sort of your digital carbon footprint. I can share the link directly after, and you can see exactly, because those are the facts that ITU use, so they are sort of more or less official.
Great, thank you very much, Matt. I'm afraid we're at time. So thank you, first of all, to the panelists for your insights, your knowledge. Thank you to the audience here on site, and of course, thanks to everyone joining us online. And
hello, everyone. Hi.